I'm recording my homily for the weekend of Corpus Christi. Technically, Corpus Christi, when we celebrate the body and blood of Jesus Christ, falls on a Thursday, but in most dioceses right now, we move it to the following Sunday. So that was this last week. So all the readings tied in with that. So I'm going to go into that a little bit. I'm not going to focus a whole lot on the readings, though. This is the first year where I've deviated from the readings a little bit, but just to focus on the theme. And the theme in general of the sacraments, right? But then focusing in on that one sacrament of the Eucharist, of Jesus Christ giving his body and blood for us. We're going to get a little practical with it, okay? So a number of years ago, when I was still pastor, we had a school. I would go into the classroom with the kids, and I would talk to the kids, and they could ask any question they wanted to ask. Now, when I would do that, there was this one day where I was talking with the kids, and I don't remember exactly the nature of the conversation, but we were talking about the sacraments. And at some point, I felt like I was disconnected, and the point I was trying to make wasn't getting across. So I started to ask the kids something like this. I said, all right, so tell me the purpose of your pencil. What does your pencil do, right? What does it do? I said, well, it writes, right? It writes, okay. And tell me the purpose of your paper. Well, the paper is a place where it records. It doesn't record, but where what you write stays, right? So we use the paper to read from and to learn and to record our thoughts and ideas, okay? And I went through all the different things in the classroom. What does this do? What does this do? What does this do? And then it says, what does your car do? What does your house do? What is its purpose? That's essentially the question I was asking. What is the purpose of all these things? And the kids had no problem whatsoever knowing all those things. Then I asked them, and I looked at them very directly, and I said, what is your purpose? What is it that you do? What is your purpose? And you know, it just kind of stunned the kids because they knew the purpose of everything around them, but as soon as I asked them what is their purpose, it was like, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. It was almost like there was a mystery there. There was something that they hadn't quite even thought about, that there was a depth there. They were like, I'm not sure. Now that's got to be a scary thought. I wish somebody had asked me that question much when I was much younger, right? Because to answer that question, there's something very profound behind that, right? So I want to take that question. Now, that question is a dangerous question because it does not get at sometimes the heart of what we need or the frame of reference that we need to have around something, right? Because if we measure the value of a person by what they can do, like a pencil can write, well, if the pencil can no longer write, what do we do with the pencil? We throw it out, right? It's broken. So if a person can't do what we think they should be able to do, what do we do with them? We throw them out. Well, now, hopefully we don't, because that's contrary to our Christian belief that we do not measure our dignity nor our value by what we can do. It's by what we are. We are children of God. Whether we can do anything or not do anything per se, you know, in the end, what can we do? Well, we can love. And nothing can take that away from us. Okay. All right. So it's a dangerous way to look at things, but I still want to use it because there's still value in looking at what are we supposed to do? What do we do? And then I want to take that and apply that to the sacraments, to Jesus Christ and the Eucharist. What does it do? What is its purpose? Right? Now, in some ways, that seems like a dangerous question also, almost like we're measuring its value based on what it can do. I'm not meaning to do that, but I want to ask the question, what does it do? What is it meant to do in a practical way? Because if it doesn't do anything, then maybe something's wrong. Not with the sacrament. It's usually with us, right? But what does it do? All right, so that's where we're going with it today. A couple years ago, there was a firefighter in parish that I was at, and I was always very impressed by him. He was very prayerful. He was very humble. He was very respectful of people, very gentle with people. If we ever needed volunteers, he was the first one to be there. He's just an all-around great guy, spiritually, just in terms of charity. But there was also something that always struck me, and it was when we would talk about his job as a firefighter. Now, a firefighter, when they go to work, and they wake up in the morning and they're on duty, they realize that they may have to give their life that day for a complete stranger. Now, obviously, they train and they work hard, so they don't necessarily have to, they're not going to die that day, right? But they know that part of their job may put them at risk where they may die trying to save a complete stranger. Now, that's pretty profound. Now, so if you ask a firefighter, what do you do? They're not going to say, well, I put my life at risk. They're not going to say that. Or I have a job that's just fun and adventurous. They're not going to say that. See, what does a firefighter do? A firefighter saves people. That's what they do. They save people. Sometimes they save property. You know, they put out fires. But when they show up to a house and that house is on fire, and they're going to go into that house, their job is to save people. That's what they do. Now, this weekend I quoted who I thought was St. Paul in Corinthians. I was totally wrong on that. It's St. Jude. It's Jude's letter. There's a part in Jude's letter in the Bible where he says, our job as disciples is to save people from the fire. That's our job, to save people from the fire. And this is not good fire. This is not the Holy Spirit fire. This is bad fire. This is when they are enmeshed in ugliness in the world. Our job is to save them from that fire. And so somebody asks you your purpose. You say, I save people. We rescue people, right? So, tying that back in the sacraments, right? Before we do that though, 2 years ago, we took our youth group to New York City and we did a little evangelization, which was a bit of a stretch, I think, for all of us. But there was one day at the end where we went around just to see some of the sights in New York City. And so we went down and we took the kids to the 9/11 Memorial. So this is where the World Trade Center, the towers, the Twin Towers were. And it was moving and it was impactful. You know, most of these kids were not even alive, or they were very young when 9/11 tragedy happened. Train. It's probably not that loud on the microphone, but it's really loud here. All right, he's done. So we took them to the 9/11 Memorial. And a lot of you probably remember the day when this happened. And so I was just thinking about it. I was just praying about it the other day because I was reflecting on, just the idea of the firefighter whose job is to save people. On 9/11, there were 3,000 people who died in those buildings, in those two towers. 3,000 people died, approximately. But the stunning statistic, the stunning number, is that almost 400 of them were firefighters. They were doing what they were trained to do. They were in those buildings to save people, right? And they all knew that someday perhaps they may have to give their life doing their job of saving people. And that didn't stop them. Most of them probably didn't necessarily think it was going to be that day. But they were all there to rescue. If a firefighter showed up to a burning house, the firefighter is not going to go there and say, well, I wonder if those people are worth it, right? I wonder if they're worth it. Firefighter's not going to do that. That's not his place to decide whether they're worth it or not. Or if a firefighter shows up to a burning house and he knows that house is his total enemy, right? He's still going to go in there and save him. Right? That's his job. And so even though he may not like that person at all, dare I use the word hate that person, right? My mom told me never to say that. But let's say he hates that person. That firefighter's still going to go into that house and put his life at risk to save that person. If a firefighter stood outside the house and thought to himself, I wonder what I'm going to get out of this. What am I going to get out of this? That person's not going to be a firefighter very long. Okay? So for us, when we think about ourselves as disciples, if we predominantly think about the sacraments as, I wonder what I'm going to get from it, right? I wonder if it's worth it. I wonder, is coming to Mass, is it worth it? Are my neighbors, are they worth it? We've already got problems. And so if we see the sacraments primarily as something that we're going to get, it's like, what am I going to get? If I come to Mass and I say, I'm only going to go there if I get a good homily, or if there's good music, or I feel lots of consolation, if I'm going to get something. You say, well, that's nice. All those things are nice. But if that's a primary thing, I've already lost it. I've already sold myself out on the sacrament. Because the purpose of the sacrament, the purpose of the sacraments, is not necessarily for us just to get something, right? But it's in the receiving that we're intrinsically preparing to give, like a firefighter. A firefighter receives training, but that's not their life. Their life is to go out and rescue people using their training. Our purpose in life is not necessarily just to be here to receive something, nor is it to just participate in a baptism ceremony when somebody's baptized, or a wedding ceremony when somebody receives a wedding, but it's to use all those graces after the ceremony, after the Mass. It's to use all those graces. Jesus Christ sets the beautiful example for us. So when he's up on the cross, he does not look at us and wonder to himself, I wonder if they're worth it. I'm going to give everything. I'm going to rescue them. I wonder if they're worth it. He doesn't do that, right? He's not up on the cross thinking to himself, what am I going to get out of this? What am I going to get out of it? God's not thinking that. When he's up on the cross, and when we make that present every time we have the Eucharist, he's saying to us, he's saying to each and every one of us, you're worth it. You're worth me dying. You are absolutely worth it. And to the person who's out there sinning and doing horrible things and rejecting God by everything they're saying and doing, Jesus Christ will still look upon them and say, you're worth it. You're worth me dying for you. And he's not thinking about what he's going to get. He's thinking about what he's giving. And so if you think about the Eucharist, that's what it's meant to do. It's meant to give, and then through us keep giving. And so we take that example, we take that model from Jesus Christ, and then we are meant to do that in our own lives every day of the week. I'm going to give. I'm going to rescue people from the fire. That's what I do. That's what we do. That's what the sacraments do. Bishop Robert Barron had a quote, I think it was in the Magnificat, but he had a quote for this weekend, and he was talking about all the different religions. And he says, you look at the different religions, Hinduism and Buddhism and Islam, and you look at all these religions, and there's something intrinsically different about our religion as Christians. And he's not saying anything necessarily bad about those other religions, other than they do not even dream about having a God who dies for his people, a God who simply gives love constantly. That's what we call grace. He's constantly giving himself. That's what the sacraments do. They constantly just pour out. It's this font, this life-giving font. And so then the sacraments impel us to do the same. That's what they do, right? In other religions, they never even would have dreamed of having a God who would do that and then expect that of his people as well. In the sacrament of marriage, when we have a couple here, and they're, I should back up. Before they arrive here at the church for the wedding day, we start marriage preparation. And a lot of times when a couple first begins marriage preparation, there's this moment where their understanding of the sacrament is not completely full. It hasn't come to its fruition. It's not completely mature. And usually I'll ask the couple a question like, so why do you want to get married? Why do you want to marry each other? And generally the persons will say, in some manner will say, well, this person makes me happy. This person makes me happy. It's like, all right, that's good. But you know what? When the marriage gets tested, that will not save the marriage. Because the person no longer makes you happy. And so if that was the foundational point for the marriage, it's going to crumble. It'll end in divorce. And so the sacrament is not necessarily about what I'm getting, right? But it's about what I'm being called to give. And so as the couple matures, they realize that the purpose of the marriage, the sacramental grace of the marriage, is to help them give more fully, more purely. And so a person can say, why am I marrying this person? Because God sees in me the ability to fulfill this person in this sacrament, in this marriage. I can be of a grace to this person. I can help them grow in holiness. I can help them get to heaven. If need be, at some point, I can save them in the sense of grace, right? In cooperation with grace. It's a very different way of looking at the sacrament. Why are we baptizing our child? Is it because we're going to get something in that? Or because we're preparing our child to begin a life of giving of themselves back, right? Of being a conduit of grace, and one day of also being a spiritual firefighter, saving others. You see, we're intrinsically missionary. So I guess in that sense, we're spiritual firefighters. So what do the sacraments do? They transform. They help us be transformed. That's what they do. Now I want to get really practical with this really quickly. The battery on my camera is really low right now, so if it cuts out, I'm sorry. That's the nature of things. So really quickly, practical example. So on your car has an oil filter, right? The purpose of the oil filter is it takes the oil and it runs it through the oil filter as your engine is running. When your oil gets really dirty, you get all kinds of bad things in the oil. So the oil filter cleans it out. It allows it allows the clean oil to go back into the engine, but it holds on to the dirt, the bad stuff, right? And so the sacraments, the Eucharist, in a sense, it's kind of like these divine filters that come into us. Because the reality is we're sinners, and so we sometimes have bad things, and we have bad desires, and we have inclinations, there's vices within us, right? And so these divine filters help us, they enable us to filter out the bad stuff and only let the good stuff go through. And so as we grow in holiness, those filters, on some sense, they become less necessary because we grow in holiness, but they help us to grow in holiness. I remember when I was much younger, my mom would have this elderly couple over to visit us, and they would talk to them and they would pray with them, and they were this nice elderly couple. But the husband, he started coming down with dementia and Alzheimer's, and so he was less able to control the things that he was saying or doing, and he was losing his filters. And when he was much younger, he was a sailor, he was a Navy sailor, And in the Navy, you get a dictionary of words that are not so nice words, right? They're very colorful words. Well, those words were starting to come back. And so he would come over and he would use all kinds of foul language. Now, my mom knew that it wasn't his fault. We knew it wasn't his fault. But if we had used those words, we would have been grounded for 5 years. He was losing his filters, right? Well, in a sense, the sacraments give us divine filters. They give us this supernatural ability. So for example, if somebody has all kinds of foul language that they use, and they begin to ask God for help, not only are they going to attain the ability to not use foul language, they're going to attain the ability to use the opposite of foul language, but words that draw people to God, words that inspire, words that help others grow, words that bring about forgiveness, right? So they do both. Now, on a natural level, a person can say, yeah, I'm going to try not to use bad words. Great. They're putting that filter in. That's natural. But supernatural, it gives them the grace to be able to allow beautiful things to come out, right? Kindness, you get a kindness filter, right? But a divine one where you show kindness where it makes no sense to show kindness, right? Because that's what Jesus did. It made no sense for God to die for his people, but he does it because that's what love does, right? Generosity, well, we can be generous, but the divine filter, once it's in us, we're generous to a crazy level, to a heroic level, right? We're generous beyond that which is reasonable. Why? Because that's what love does. That's what divine love does. And so we more and more begin to look like Jesus Christ. There's a phrase that all of the great mystics would use at some point. We always need to be careful with it, but they would say the purpose of the Eucharist is to deify us, is to help us become God. Not another God, not a God in addition to God, but to become so united to God, right? To become so united to God that people see God. I mean, it kind of blows your mind when you think about it. And that's why Jesus, when he's up on the cross, looks at us and he says, they're worth it. You're worth it. Because then he can be present for all ages through us receiving the sacraments. So what do the sacraments do? They transform. They help us to become more like him, to be his presence more and more, and just to give that more and more. All right. God bless. Next week here at St. Mary's, we're celebrating our 50th anniversary of the dedication of this church building. So my homily may reflect that. All right. God bless.